There comes a moment in every life when the illusion breaks. You can feel it long before it happens, the subtle tightening in your chest, the quiet tremor beneath your routines, the unspoken suspicion that the structure you've built around yourself is thinner than it looks. Control has boundaries, but we rarely admit that until the edges begin to crack. We cling harder. We tighten our grip. We try to hold together a life that feels like sand slipping through our fingers. And then, when the strain becomes too much, when the weight of everything we've been carrying finally overwhelms us, we fall into a truth we have spent years avoiding. You never had control. You only had the illusion of it. And strangely, beautifully, painfully, the moment you lose it is the same moment you finally encounter surrender. This is not the surrender of defeat, not the surrender of hopelessness, weakness, or resignation. It is a surrender that feels like a doorway, a surrender that tastes like the first deep breath after drowning. It is surrender as freedom, surrender as alignment, surrender as the return to what is real. To reach that point, you must first confront everything within you that resists it. The myth of control you were taught to chase, you were raised in a world that worships control. Master your emotions, dominate your circumstances, shape your destiny, take charge of everything. Control is portrayed as the ultimate strength, as if a perfectly ordered life is the highest achievement a human being can attain. But beneath that ideal lies the truth no one wants to admit. The more you cling to control, the more anxious you become. You monitor every detail. You anticipate every possibility. You try to secure every outcome before it arrives. And soon, life becomes less like something you live and more like something you patrol. Control becomes a prison disguised as stability, because to maintain the illusion that you are in charge, you must live in constant fear of losing it. You become hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant, hyper-resistant to anything that threatens the fragile stability you've created. You stop living spontaneously. You stop trusting the unknown. You stop breathing deeply. And the tragedy is that you don't even realize how much energy it takes to constantly hold everything together until something cracks. The pressure builds quietly. Then, all at once, most losses of control don't begin dramatically. They begin subtly. A plan that doesn't unfold the way you expected. A relationship where the other person stops following your script. A career path that suddenly changes direction. A health diagnosis that interrupts your certainty. A dream you had for years that refuses to cooperate. A future you shaped carefully that dissolves before your eyes. At first, you respond with determination, an internal voice whispering, "I can fix this. I can manage this." But then the unexpected multiplies, the unpredictable compounds, the uncontrollable accelerates, until one day, you're sitting in the quiet of your room or driving alone on a dimly lit road, and you feel something shift. You are no longer steering anything. You are no longer holding the reins. You are no longer in command. Life has taken a turn without your permission. And in that moment, panic rises like a wave, because losing control feels like losing identity. The panic before surrender, your mind tries to make sense of the unraveling. It tries to rebuild order through force. It begins to race, grasping for anything that feels familiar, safe, predictable. This is the stage where fear becomes loud, where worst-case scenarios multiply, where everything you've suppressed rises to the surface. You worry you'll never regain stability. You fear you'll never feel grounded again. You imagine collapse. The voice inside you, the one trained to control everything, begins to scream. This can't be happening. This is not how it's supposed to go. I'm supposed to be stronger than this. But that voice, for all its intensity, is not truth. It is simply the last roar of an ego that senses it is losing its throne. The panic isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that surrender is getting closer, because panic only erupts when the part of you that needs control realizes it's dying. The breaking point, when control finally falls apart, there is always a breaking point. The moment where everything in you reaches its limit. You might collapse in tears. You might fall to your knees. You might feel numb, disconnected, or strangely hollow. You might be unable to fight anymore. And in that moment, when you are finally, undeniably out of strength, you meet the truth. You are not in control. You were never meant to be, and that is not a failure. It is a release. That there is a silence after breakdown that feels unlike anything you've experienced before, a strange quietness, holy, where everything in you is too exhausted to resist. Your defenses fall, your fears soften, your mind stops fighting reality. This is the doorway. This is surrender. What surrender really means, most people misunderstand surrender. They think it's giving up, folding, collapsing, quitting. But authentic surrender is none of those. To surrender is to stop forcing what was never yours to control. Stop fighting battles that were not meant to be yours. Stop carrying burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. It is the moment when your spirit whispers, I cannot do this alone. I am done pretending I can. I am letting go of what hurts to hold. And suddenly, almost imperceptibly at first, something shifts. You feel lighter. You feel clearer. You feel like the ground beneath you is no longer collapsing. Why? Because surrender reconnects you to what is real. Control disconnects. Surrender reunites. Control isolates. Surrender aligns. Control drains. Surrender restores. Control demands certainty. Surrender trusts process. And the greatest paradox of all, when you surrender, you don't lose power, you regain it. Not the false power of controlling everything, but the deeper power of being aligned with something greater than your fear. The liberation hidden in letting go. Something extraordinary happens once you've surrendered. You begin to breathe again. Your thoughts stop spiraling. Your chest loosens. Your shoulders drop. Your heartbeat slows. You stop bracing for disaster. You stop rehearsing catastrophe. You stop predicting failure. You become open, and openness is the birthplace of transformation. In surrender, new possibilities appear, possibilities you could not perceive when control consumed you. You begin to see paths you were blind to before, because your fear kept you fixated on one narrow outcome. Letting go doesn't empty your life, it expands. It dots the freedom, feels unfamiliar at first. Might even feel guilty for not worrying. You might feel strange walking without constant vigilance. You might feel unready to trust peace. But this is the new you, learning how to exist outside the cage you occupied for years, the God who meets you in surrender whether or not you speak God's name. The pattern is universal. Transformation begins where your control ends. Always, every time, there is something divine, something beyond the small limits of your flesh waiting on the other side of surrender. Call it God, grace, truth, universe, or simply clarity. It is the presence that steps into the gap you could never fill with your own effort, the guidance that arrives only after your certainty collapses, the comfort that emerges when your pride becomes quiet. When you stop clinging, you can finally receive. When you stop directing, you can finally hear. When you stop resisting, life can finally move. Divine guidance never competes with your control. It waits for the moment you release it, and once you do, you realize you were never alone. You were never abandoned. You were only busy trying to steer a ship you didn't build. The new life that emerges from surrender. You don't revert to who you were before losing control. You evolve. You become softer but stronger, calmer but sharper, wiser but more childlike in trust, less fearful and more grounded, less rigid and more fluid. Your relationship with uncertainty changes. Your relationship with fear changes. Your relationship with yourself changes. You no longer break under pressure. You bend, you move, you adapt, and the most surprising part, you become grateful for the moment you lost control, because it led you to a deeper truth, a truer version of yourself, a life not built on fear or tension, but on trust. You would not go back, even if you could. The ongoing practice of surrender is not something you experience once. It is something you return to again and again. Every new season will test your grip. Every transition will reveal new layers of control you didn't realize you were still holding. Every challenge will invite you to release something deeper, but you no longer fear those moments because you no longer fear losing control. You've learned that the unraveling is the beginning, not the end. You've learned that the breakdown is the threshold, not the collapse. You've learned that surrender is not a fall. It is a landing. It is the place where strength is reborn. The final truth. Losing control is not failure, it's freedom. As you stand in the life you've rebuilt, with peace woven into your breath and clarity resting on your heart, you finally understand the truth that was chasing you all along. You don't find surrender by choosing it. You find surrender when control finally stops working. The falling apart was never punishment. The chaos was never cruelty. The storm was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to free you. It was meant to strip away everything you were clinging to, everything that exhausted you, everything that blinded you to the life waiting beyond your fear. And now, on the other side, you can see clearly. You didn't lose control. Control lost you, because your soul was never meant to conform to the smallness of a life built on fear. It was meant to expand into the vastness of a life shaped by trust. When you lose control, you don't fall apart. You finally come home.